Hello and welcome to the Mississippi Soccer Channel. My name is Robert Chapman, and I'm excited that we're finally getting moving along on this project. Now, I know during this summer that soccer in Mississippi for Mississippi people is fairly limited to team camps, to ID camps, USL League 2 action with Hattiesburg and Mississippi Bria FC, as well as other local action for men and women. You've got the Blues and GAFA here in central Mississippi. I know that there are some teams down on the coast that are doing their thing. And that's kind of what we got when it comes to soccer in summer here in the Magnolia State. Also, kind of a break-in side note, I have loved getting to see all of the teams during their team camps or seven-a-side photos. I love to share those on Instagram. I see you post them. I love to share them and repost them. So if you don't follow the Mississippi Soccer Channel on Instagram, go ahead and do that. You know, it costs you nothing. Do that. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on YouTube. It'll help everybody out. We are at Mississippi Soccer on Instagram, and then on YouTube, we are at Mississippi Soccer Channel. Shameless plug, I know. But, you know, if I'm not pushing it to the public, then what am I doing? Anyway, I'd venture a guess that when we think about soccer in Mississippi, we don't necessarily associate it with the cutting edge or being on the forefront of any sort of trend. I'd even go further and venture a second guess that many of you would say that Mississippi is probably a few steps behind the nation when it comes to soccer being more than just a local sport for kids to play at the rec league level. In fact, I guarantee a lot of people probably would feel that way who've gotten out of soccer or who don't have a robust program going near them. And that assumption wouldn't be wrong, not necessarily. And it's not just for soccer. It's the same notion for other sports like lacrosse or wrestling or even volleyball. Remember when volleyball was fairly new to the state and it kind of came in through DeSoto County, Memphis brought it into North Mississippi, and it just took over. Mississippi tends to be on the trailing entity in many things, leaving us open to a stereotype that is, it's Mississippi. You know the one I'm talking about. The one those of us who live here tend to roll our eyes at, you know, we're all about wearing shoes or whether or not we're educated, banjos in the deep woods, that kind of stuff. The reality of what makes it Mississippi is that we have all the things, and we've had them for quite a while. Go back forever ago, and we have the Faulkners of the world, the Tennessee Williams of the world, the Jerry Rices of the world, the Walter Paytons of the world, Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, all of that. Those names are massive, but let's face it, they're from another age entirely. It's great that we have these giants whose shoulders we can stand on, but the greatness and the forward momentum didn't stop with these people. It really kind of took off like a rocket. Some of what made Mississippi amazing, like the first heart transplant, the underground nuclear testing, both of those, by the way, happened in 1964. Stennis Space Center being the biggest rocket testing facility and the place where the Saturn V rockets staged their Apollo mission testing. Meridian was the home of PV amps. I happen to have a PV amp that was made in Meridian for my bass guitar back there. You've got MTV, you've got the teddy bear, you've got shoe boxes that came from Vicksburg. Look that one up. That was a new one. I didn't know all about that. But these things still impact not only the Magnolia State, but the rest of the world. I mean, think about it. Without the teddy bear, there'd be no Paddington. And without the shoe box, there'd probably be no Nike. We'll take that one. I'll take that one. I'll run with that one all day long. All of that to say, there's a whole heap of history right here in Mississippi that we oftentimes forget to remember, keeping that backwoods Southern stereotype at the forefront of our minds. Just by happenstance, I was scrolling through Facebook, and for some reason, the Mississippi State alumni page popped up. Now, I have 2 degrees from Ole Miss, so this caught my eye. I instantly wondered, how in the world did this maroon end up on my timeline? And once I finally pushed past this whole Mississippi State thing, I saw a bunch of black and white pictures of a bunch of guys playing soccer and a caption that read, "As the 2026 FIFA World Cup gets underway, here's a look back at the highly successful MSU club soccer team of the 1970s and the 1980s, the MSU Conquistadors. They racked up 21 consecutive winning seasons and achieved a staggering 87, 5, and 10 record over the team's first decade." And I thought that's pretty cool. You know, I know that that it was Mississippi State, but I still thought that was pretty cool. And I didn't know that they had such a thing like that back at Mississippi State way back then, right? I mean, it's 1970s. That's a decade before I was born. Comments started coming in with former students remembering the old days. One comment in particular caught my eye. It's a guy named Dickens Fournet, and he said that he was part of the team in 1983. I thought, okay, long shot, but I wonder if there's a chance that I could maybe talk with him and get some of his memories. I got a lot more than that. First of all, Dickens Fournet, what a name. Fantastic name. That's a great name. If anybody wants to use it for a novel, you've got to send him a letter and say, am I allowed to use your name, and give him a percentage of your successful royalties. Anyway, what a name. He is from right here in central Mississippi. He played for St. Joe back in the early 80s, and he was part of the very first high school all-star game that was held here in Clinton, Mississippi at what was just then Robinson Field. It hadn't been named Robinson Hale Field yet at Mississippi College, which of course, Mississippi College just renamed themselves Mississippi Christian University, but that change doesn't go back for maybe a month or so at this current recording. So back in 1983, it was still Mississippi College. Dickens is now a CPA at GranthamPoole in Ridgeland. And not only does he have some great stories, but he very graciously allowed me the time to come and visit him and capture his memories for posterity. I firmly believe that we need to know where we've been in order to know where we would like to go. So visiting with him, that was an absolute no-brainer. I hope you enjoy this. So like I told you through email, this project that I'm doing is I don't know how large it'll get. I hope it gets massive, but there's a huge conversation about soccer in Mississippi that needs to be shared, and there's a massive amount of history. And so just kind of scrolling through Facebook one evening, I saw Mississippi State alumni posted something about 1983 soccer team, and you posted and said that you were part of it. And so just by happenstance, I sent you a direct message and we linked up. So I guess let's kind of start all the way at the beginning. Okay. When did you start playing soccer?
Well, it's funny, Robert, back when I was, growing up, soccer's not as big as it is today.
Right.
So, we didn't have the little junior leagues. My son, when he was coming, started out, that's the first sport he played when he's 3 and 4 years old. So I did not get exposed to soccer until my 6th grade year at St. Richard's Catholic School, when they started an elementary, Catholic soccer league at
right.
St. Richard's. And we had a real good team. We beat all the other teams in the league. So I was really pumped, and I said, look, man, I want to keep playing this. I told my mom and dad I was playing, football and other sports too, but I really like soccer a lot, I told them. So I started getting involved with soccer, and then after my 6th grade year, I went to Jackson Prep my junior high years, and they were just getting up a soccer program then. And they were, it takes, families and people putting, getting these things together. I remember J.T. Noblin, which was John Noblin's dad at the time, was in the same grade with me at Jackson Prep. He was one of the ones that really kind of pushed and got the soccer program started there. So I played soccer there through my junior high years, and had a lot of good fun times, and had a really good coach and mentor all the way through my junior high years, all the way to high school, which was Raul Sierra, who was a excellent coach. And so that's my just a quick roundup of the origin of how I got involved in soccer.
Yeah, like you mentioned that soccer now versus then, there's organized rec leagues, and right. You organize and plan your Saturday around, what the 6 and 7 year olds are doing. Yeah. It couldn't have been anything like that back in the 70s and 80s.
It really wasn't, Robert. I think it was just starting out, and I got some information for you showing who were the first. I think the first state championship games were actually 1975, but I bet there were probably only maybe half a dozen or a dozen teams playing, and now you got teams from all over the state. But back when I was getting started, I would say there were pockets in the central Mississippi area. We had a couple of teams that were rivals. We were called Jackson Lakeland Soccer Club.
Okay.
And then they had another team called Jackson United, and there was the Southwest Jackson Soccer Club. But Vicksburg had a good, strong soccer program, and I think Columbus did too. And the coast teams were, when I was coming up in the late 70s, early 80s, when we go to state tournament every year, we would do well, on all our games during the year, but we'd go down to the coast, for the state championship games, and they were always the stronger teams. They had, Pascagoula, Singing River, Ocean Springs, Biloxi. They seemed to have a strong presence back then, and they were the strongest teams. But yeah, like you said, there were just not a whole lot of junior rec teams. If you were on a so-called travel team, you were on a team that that was going to compete in the state tournament every year. So
yeah, I guess something that we can always kind of land on now is like with lacrosse showing up, and then when volleyball really took off in North Mississippi, and it kind of swept all the way through. You're starting to see wrestling creep in. Wow. I guess that's kind of what it was to see now, 25, 30, 45 years down the road of what it looked like once it started. It really is an amazing thing. The soccer in Mississippi in the late 70s, were all of you who were together, was it kind of a niche group of people? Because, like I said, my dad graduated high school in the 70s, so it was, anytime we played, it was always that, the communist kickball and all that kind of stuff and all. Was it a niche group of why are you interested in this, and why are you not playing baseball or playing football or anything else?
It was a little bit of that. Sometimes soccer, I played other sports too. I played football, all the way through high school, and then I always played church league basketball. Played baseball growing up all the way to the pony leagues. But you did find, when I was starting out, soccer was for people who were probably not into the big other sports at that time. They were not football players or baseball or basketball players, and it was a good sport for somebody that wanted to try a sport that was just something different, and they didn't fit into football or soccer. Football or baseball or basketball. Mm-hmm. So, but I think now, I think some of the better players we had that I played with were well-rounded athletes. Too.
Right.
But there were some different families. Just like I said, J.T. Nobbin, got us involved. There was the Escalante family. There were 4 brothers. There was Javier, Bill, Carlos, and Al. Their parents were very instrumental in getting soccer brought here to the central Mississippi area. There's an attorney, Sebastian Moore, who got soccer involved here in Mississippi as well. And then there was someone else, Mr. Albert Lyle, who's in the Mississippi Tennis Hall of Fame. His kids were very involved in soccer. So it took families, getting their kids involved, and also raising the money for the teams and making sure that they had a good schedule to play, and getting a coach and everything. So it took families getting involved to get, soccer kicked off back then.
So you said 1983. So let's kind of put it in perspective. Again, we're talking about the years, the generations.
Yeah.
I was born in 1984. Okay. So we'll put that there. It was one where my parents were wondering if I was showing up or not. So 1983, there was the first Mississippi Coca-Cola High School All-Star game, and you were part of that. Wow. So tell me a little bit about being part of this first gathering, and then kind of what it was like.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of an exciting time frame. I remember the soccer game being announced, and I didn't know I was on the team or anything, and I didn't know I was on the team until the night of my high school graduation. They announced it earlier than that, but I didn't. My soccer coach, who it wasn't Raul Sierra, Raul was actually our soccer coach, but you had to have somebody in the school to be it was Leanne Collins, didn't see me until my high school graduation. I knew Kevin Topic, if they had a high school all-star game, I knew he would get selected. He was a much better player than I was. So I was just hoping, I said, maybe I will have a chance. Well, I didn't hear, I never heard that I got announced that I was going to play. So I didn't even know I was going to be on the team until she told me that. So I was very excited. So, but it was a fun time because we did get, a fair amount of publicity. We had our, they had articles in the paper leading up to the game. They had, was on the front page of the sports section. I think I got a newspaper clipping I can give you showing that. And, it had all kinds of articles talking about it. But it was a fun time. We were housed at Mississippi College for 4 nights, so it's kind of fun, in the dorms with the guys. Getting to know the guys is a lot of fun knowing the guys. And there's some interesting characters on that team too. One of the guys from Vicksburg, Gates Weaver, he went on to play at Southern Miss and then at University of Maryland. But he also went and played in the German, national leagues, and I think he's in the Vicksburg Hall of Fame now. And another interesting story is, this goes back to my high school days when I was at St. Joe in 1981. A guy named Brian Hudson was on the opposite team. And he went on to play football at Mississippi State, was a good athlete. And he even played some pro football. And we played them in high school in 1981, the year I think we won the state championship. We actually got beat by them pretty bad, trounced by them. They had a really good team, beat us like 4-1. I was thinking, man, we're not going to win the championship this year. Well, the funny thing is, I was always real feisty, and he and I got in kind of a pushing match, and we both got red card.
Really?
Well, thank goodness nothing, we didn't get in a fight or anything, because he went on to be the winner of the very first Gladiators. I don't know if you remember the show, The Gladiators.
Yeah, I remember that show.
And if you look it up, he was the very first champion of the Gladiators, so he would have probably cleaned my clock. So, but that was kind of a funny story, when I think back. But he was a real good athlete, and I think Brian had played in 3 high school all-star games that year. He played in the football, soccer, and baseball, and maybe with a few guys up until there was a young fellow from Taylorsville, Billy Hamilton, that did the same thing a few years back. So.
I think it's pretty interesting you said that y'all were housed there for 4 nights, because currently whenever there's the Max All-Stars or the North versus South or MHSAA or any of the MAIS, it's a 1-night thing. You get together, you have a little bit of a practice, and then you have an exhibition match. But I think that's pretty interesting that you all stayed together for 4 nights to really kind of cohese.
I thought that was a lot of fun. And then, of course, me and Kevin, since we're high school high school players together, we were roommates during that time. But it was fun. You got to know all the other guys in the dorms, and we were separated from the guys from the other team, so we didn't get to hang around the guys from the other team. But it was a fun time. It was kind of exciting, and I enjoyed that.
So you were a sophomore, I believe, when you won the state championship with St. Joe. Is that correct?
I was a junior.
A junior. Yeah. And then in 1983, you were on the All-Star team. But then also in 1983, you moved on to Mississippi State University. Right. And they had a team there, which if you look at the landscape now of collegiate sports, especially collegiate soccer, there are no SEC men's teams that compete in the SEC. We were talking earlier, I think Kentucky and maybe was it South Carolina, but they'll compete outside of the SEC. The women will put together teams, and they have inside the conference. But Mississippi State at that time, you all had a team, and you were on it. Tell me a little bit about how that team was put together and what the competition looked like.
Well, I think the team was very well organized. They had a coach from, I think he was from Turkey, and his name, I got to look it up again, Zini Aksoy, when I was there. And when I came to Mississippi State, I was just wondering if I was going to make the team, because they had already had a well-formed, a lot of good athletes on the team. In fact, they had the 2 Escalante brothers I mentioned previously, Bill and Javier, that were on the team. I think they may have helped me get on the team, to tell the truth. I think they had, I heard about it, when I was going through orientation. I said, look, I think I would like to play soccer. I was telling my parents, I said, well, look it up and sign up when you get there. And when I did, I saw there were like 60 or 70 people that signed up. Well, there was only like 3 or 4 spots available on the team. And I knew Kevin Topic was going to get on the team. He was an excellent player, and he became a player coach after the Turkish coach had left. And so I knew there was only a couple spots left, but I remember me and Bobby Lank, who played on the opposite side, the west side of the All-Star game, were the 2 that made the team. And I really think Bill and Javier may have pulled some strings that said, get Dickens on the team. He's a pretty decent athlete. We needed him on there. But I'm thankful. It was a lot of fun. It was just so much talent, and we had talents from all different countries. We had a guy named Louis Lupek from Colombia. We had the Escalante brothers who were, not actually born in Costa Rica, but their parents were. We had a guy named Ian Banner who was British. He was just an excellent player. And then we had a fella named Koresh Kadovi, who was from Iran. That was a great player. Then we had a guy named Dennis Adeno. This guy was a Nigerian sprinter on the Mississippi State track team. Well, he played on just played on the soccer team. Not all the time, but he made most of the games. Well, he ran for Nigeria in the Olympics for Nigeria. Really? So that was kind of neat too. So you just had a lot of good talent. We would just, we'd beat a lot of the teams we'd play. We'd play of course Mississippi State. We played Ole Miss, Southern. I think we played Alabama. We may play Georgia, but we played like Delta State. We played the junior colleges around here, and we would did fairly well. I think we only tied one game the whole year and won all the rest.
Right.
Now I'm sure we could have beat some of the varsity teams around here, at least some of the smaller ones.
What is it that you I guess we'll bundle this question into a bunch of questions. Do you keep up with any of the guys still from there? And then what did that squad, what did they all grow up to be? You're here as a CPA, but what did the rest of everybody else end up being post their soccer career?
I hate to say I haven't kept up with many of them, but I did run into Gates Weaver. Gates has always been a character, and everybody loved Gates. He was a character back then, and I think he's a character now still, from what I understand. But he's in Hattiesburg now, and he works at the Lucky Rabbit, which is I guess it's kind of like a consignment store. And he's the one that I told you about that played, I think, at Southern Maryland and maybe played some German soccer. But he and I got together. We said, look, we need to get a reunion together. And I do keep up with Kevin Topic. I'm sorry, Kevin Topic's old high school graduate of mine. So Kevin and I, talk from time to time whenever something, relates to our old high school group, get-togethers and everything. But we tried a couple of years back. Gates and I said, let's try to, get together a reunion of the first high school all-star game. And we started kind of running the numbers and trying to contact everybody, and we just figured it's going to cost a lot of money. So we had a lot of hard work trying to get the guys together. I wish the Mississippi High School Activity Association would sponsor something or try to get together maybe a reunion of the first high school all-star game. I think that would be kind of neat.
That would be pretty fun.
I think that would be a really neat thing to do, but that kind of fell through. We just could not get that together. So I really hadn't run across. I remember back when I was playing for state, some of the guys that played in the high school all-star game with me were playing soccer for Hines Community College, which they were offering scholarships back then.
Right.
So I got to see a few of those guys then, but I hadn't kept up with them. I heard that Jamie Greer, who played in the high school all-star game, he was elected into their Warren Central's Hall of Fame just recently too. So and Brian Hudson, just like I said, he played in that game. He went on and played at football at Mississippi State and played professional football. And I think he's had a real successful business career in Houston, Texas.
Okay.
So, but other than that, I just really hadn't. I'm sorry to say, I really haven't been able to keep up with a lot of the guys.
When you look at the horizon of soccer again today, going through, you've been a parent of a child who's gone through, and then even kind of looking and seeing where it's going from now on. Do you have any opinions about the way that soccer is now, for the positive and even for the negative?
Well, I think the positive, it has grown quite a bit here in Mississippi too. I just wish, there were more Division I scholarship opportunities on the men's side. Of course, there are on the women's side. When I was going to state, there's just rumors. This was way back in 1983. Carl Maddox was the athletic director then, and the rumor was, he said, well, if we make one more men's sport varsity, it's going to be soccer. For some reason, he was a soccer fan. it just never happened. I guess they just never get the push and everything. And like I said, state soccer was very successful. They did well, but it just hadn't been the push to get a Division I teams here. I just wish there were just a little bit more opportunities. I saw so much talent run through here, Robert. There were guys like Kevin Toppy. He should have definitely. He was a great player. He should have definitely gotten a scholarship somewhere. Ed Metters, there's a guy I played on my club teams all these years. He was an excellent player. There's a guy named Duke Barbie. Duke Barbie did go on to play at Millsaps, but I'm sure Duke could have played some Division I soccer, somewhere. There are just all kinds of. I just don't think Mississippi gets enough sniffs with college programs and everything, and I wish there was just a little bit more opportunity. But I think it has grown. And back when I was growing up, Robert, once the Mississippi teams would win their state championships, you would go to regionals and play. And I don't know if you remember that when you were growing up. Yeah. The Mississippi teams would typically get trounced on the early days. Well, now, I remember years ago, the under-19 team won like the national championship. So I think now, we're competing against the other, competing against the teams in the regions and even in the nation now. So I think soccer in Mississippi has really grown. And I'd like to hear that.
And I think it goes with a little bit of intentionality. I worked for a guy one time who always used to say, things that matter aren't left up to chance. And so I think that the way that local programs, that the ODP program, that Mississippi Soccer Association, it's growing, and I think they're being a little more intentional, and even drawing people from other states, other nations to come here and invest in our talent in the future. World Cup's going on right now. Are you by chance watching it, and are you impressed with anything?
Well, yeah, I was impressed that the U.S. won so big against Paraguay, and I thought that I've heard that that's the most impressive World Cup win we've had in quite a while, and I'm looking forward to the 2:00 game tomorrow. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Australia?
It's Australia, the Socceroos.
So I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully winning that game and getting to the next round. I would be happy if we win one match out of the next round, but I tell you the truth, I'd love it if we even got further. But if we won one match after the breakout rounds, I'll be very happy.
Well, I appreciate your time here. Like I said, stealing a little bit of time in the middle of the day. Your stories are extraordinarily intriguing because like I said, in my mind, my little world, soccer was just kind of getting going in the 90s, but there's a world of history before that I think is often overlooked, and that's one of the things that I wanted to kind of, bring to light with this project.
Well, good. I really enjoyed this, Robert. It's fun kind of reminiscing about the old days.
Absolutely. Thank you. I could have stayed and talked with him all day long. Now it may be a long shot, but if anyone knows any of the people that he mentioned, or if you happen to be the people that he mentioned, I'd love to make a connection and see what we could make happen. It'd be cool to see if we could get some sort of reunion established, and I'd love to help out in any way that I can. I made a post a few days ago that there are so many people who are instrumental in establishing soccer as a staple in their own communities, investing in the early days of Mississippi soccer. For me, it was Thomas Bobo. I also know that his father was very instrumental as well. So let me know who those people from your childhood, from your schools, and from your communities were who helped lay that foundation for soccer and what it is today. I'd love to take this time again and thank Dickens Fournet for taking the time out of his day to share his stories and for his hospitality. He provided some pictures and some newspaper clips from the Jackson Daily News and the Clarion Ledger. Give MississippiSoccerChannel.com a visit. There are some cool pictures of all-star squads, a St. Joe championship team, and memories from the Mississippi State Conquistadors. If you or anyone you know may have a great story to share, send me a DM on all the social medias or email me at theRobertChapman.com. I'll be back next week to talk to a coach who has history of his own and a bright future ahead. Keep that back line high, keep your head on a swivel, and stay locked in right here on the Mississippi Soccer Channel.